All right. Yay. Welcome, everybody. I think we should all introduce ourselves. I'm Natasha.
Hi, Natasha. I'm Karen.
I'm
I'm
Cheryl.
Louise.
Sorry.
Hi, Cheryl. I'm Louise.
So Louise is our new face. Tell us who you are.
My husband and I have had a health insurance brokerage here in Colorado for about 15 years. And since about 2006, I've been writing about health insurance and healthcare reform, first on the state level, and then for the last several years on the federal level. So I mostly spend my time reading legislation and HHS regulations and IRS regulations, and then turning them into, how does this affect you, sort of thing.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I am absolutely smitten with your tweets.
Oh, thank you.
You make my Twitter feed much more intelligent and like imparting knowledge. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am excited that you can come talk to us because, Natasha, what's our topic today?
Our topic today is chip and not the potato kind. Ding. Yeah, we're talking about the Children's Health Insurance Program, which was supposed to be renewed on September 30th, and they missed the deadline. And now everybody's trying to make up other bills to kind of like replace it or amend it and get funding from other places. And things have started to spiral a little bit out of control. So we are going to talk about the alternatives that have been offered up or the potential consequences of the funding not being renewed and what could happen to the states and their poor budgets that they completely took for granted that this was going to be renewed and did not plan for.
And I've got some exciting context coming up that I'm going to tease for. But Louise, what in the world is CHIP?
So CHIP is health insurance for kids. It's been around for 20 years. It's always had strong bipartisan support. It does have to get reauthorized as far as funding periodically every few years, but it has never not been reauthorized. So states just assume that it will be reauthorized. They've worked it into their budgets. And also the ACA boosted the federal funding match. So it's a joint state federal program. The states used to be the states paid about 30% on average, and the feds paid about 70%. The ACA boosted that up to the federal government paying 93% through 2019, an average of 93%. It varies from state to state. But that was supposed to be through 2019. So states, not only were they counting on CHIP funding when they made their budgets for 2018, but they were counting on this enhanced CHIP funding. And now all of a sudden they find out, oops, we didn't get it done. And I mean, like I say, it does have strong bipartisan support, but the reason it didn't get done this year, I would say, has more to do with the dynamics in Washington. I mean, there was so much focus on the Republican side on just repealing the ACA that all the other important stuff kind of fell by the wayside, and CHIP would be one of the really important things. So there's about 9 million kids and pregnant moms as well, but mostly kids rely on CHIP. Here in Colorado, we have about 75,000 kids and about 800 pregnant moms on CHIP. And it's for lower income families, but not necessarily what you might consider really low income. It's sort of a little bit above the Medicaid threshold. Like here in Colorado, CHIP extends up to 260% of the poverty level, which off the top of my head, I'm thinking is like 62,000 a year, maybe, for like a family of 4. So it's not, people necessarily living in poverty, but it's families that would struggle to pay for private health insurance for their whole family. And the upside to CHIP is, a lot of states have enrollment fees or small copays, but they're modest, especially when you compare it with like what you'd pay for premiums or stuff, deductibles and out-of-pocket costs on private health insurance. So CHIP makes it so families can have good quality coverage for their kids and not have to really stress about how are we going to pay these premiums, how are we going to pay these copays. So that's why it's so important.
All right, so you said bipartisan support, meaning both Republicans and Democrats love their kids.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. So that's a good place to start. And so it's providing almost free but not quite free health insurance for kids. And kids can't be that expensive to cover, but boy, if you need the coverage, you sure want that in place, because
Right.
sure it's more expensive to have uncovered kids running around in the end.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Just the phrasing of
And I
that.
mean,
Sorry.
There's long term, there's tons of studies that show that long term, you know, you look at kids who got health insurance in the 80s through like a pilot program, Medicaid expansion, you look at them 20 years later, and not just their health, but like their economic status is better, their, you know, just like long term, everything is better when as a child you had access to healthcare. And that makes sense on so many levels. You know, if you grow up sick and in need of healthcare and not getting it, it kind of puts a damper on everything else. Whereas if your healthcare is taken care of, you can kind of focus on, you know, education and moving your way up in life. And so, yeah, they both Medicaid and CHIP, there is overwhelming evidence that it sets people on a good path when you do that as kids.
okay, so healthy kids will also pay more taxes in the end because
Absolutely.
they wind up being more successful. So therefore, it's not just morally the right thing to do, economically not a bad call either.
I would definitely agree.
Okay, so besides the fact that they were distracted with the repeal and replace debacle, is there like any real reason why we can't have this?
Well, I mean, okay, an example would be Democrats wanted to tie in CHIP reauthorization with cost sharing reduction funding, which stabilizes the individual health insurance markets. And that's kind of that's an Obamacare related thing, but it's hugely important for people who buy their own health insurance. And so that's another one of those. It's like there's so many pressing issues right now. And then the Healthy Kids Act that the House came up with would also tie in extra Medicaid funding for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so you've got, I don't think necessarily that anybody says, hey, we don't want to fund CHIP. But when you start tying in other things, you know, there were definitely Republicans who said, we don't want to necessarily go ahead and fund these cost sharing reductions for Obamacare right now because we're so focused on repealing Obamacare. And so you start tying these things together, and it's, I think, sometimes kind of hard to tell which one's dragging the other down.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you mentioned Healthy Kids, and Natasha and I were talking the other day. So the Senate version is Senate Bill 1827. It's the Keep Insurance Dependable and Secure. Keep Insurance Dependable and Secure. Kids, it's an acronym, because they love to do that, right? So then the House version, all right, ready? Settle in. Helping ensure access for little ones, toddlers, and hopefully youth by keeping insurance delivery stable act. That's Healthy Kids.
I hate
They
it
manage
so much.
Healthy Kids.
So written out, does that take up like half a page?
Yeah, just the title.
Yeah.
And they had to resort to little ones. So then that had me go off and look at HR 2884, which is the Covfefe Act. They actually managed to spell out Covfefe. And then famously HR 1711, the Mar-a-Lago Act, which was about making the logs legally like transparent. They managed to spell out Mar-a-Lago. Just good times. They're fun.
Is there one yet that spells out effing moron?
I mean, do they have like a whole separate department just dedicated to acronyms? Like, I feel like that's something that people should be paid specifically for, and somebody should be getting maybe put on probation for the Healthy Kids one, because that feels like.
You saw all the resignation letters that came out when Trump, after Charlottesville, all spelled impeach if you read the first word or the first letter down every paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. I feel like maybe I digressed a little bit.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so Louise, I have another theory, so you can shoot me down because this is maybe a little conspiracy. This is what Hillary Clinton was taking credit for on the campaign trail when she said she got lots of children insurance, right? It was helping get the CHIP. Okay, so is that like part of the No. All right.
I don't know. Okay, so here's the deal with Trump. I don't know that he necessarily understands any of this. I mean, yesterday he have Henry Kissinger in there was saying this guy is facing this huge rate increase, so therefore we need to fix Obamacare. And I mean, the guy's 94, he's on Medicare. This has nothing to do with Obamacare. So I couldn't actually say whether Trump knows the difference between CHIP and Obamacare, or that he knows that Obamacare enhanced the funding for CHIP. My guess is no.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I would guess that he doesn't know. I would say, I mean, possibly, and there's been so much, I don't know, just political fighting about healthcare this summer that maybe it's all just like, it all just falls in the same, gets swept into the same dustpan. But I would doubt that he knows enough about it to like be connecting all those dots. But
Okay.
But maybe you're right. Maybe this is just like his long con.
Another personal vendetta.
But the big thing I think is that this was just the priority for both Trump and Republicans in Congress this summer was repeal the ACA. And I mean, we had a bipartisan stabilization solution on the table in September that Mitch McConnell pulled off the table in September and said, no, we're going to go, focus 100% on repeal. And so I don't know that it was necessarily an attempt to shoot down CHIP reauthorization as much as an attempt to try to push through ACA repeal, and everything else just fell by the wayside.
So children were innocent bystanders.
Yes.
Sad. All right.
But this can all still be fixed.
Yes.
I think that's one important thing to make sure people understand is that, yes, the program expired as far as the reauthorization goes at the end of September, but there's still money there. And I think it's 11 states have said they'll run out of money by the end of the year. And I think Nevada will actually run out of money next month. So it is definitely a dire situation in some places. Mm-hmm. Colorado, I think, still has funding through the end of January. And there's quite a few states have funding like through the end of March next year. So we need to get this done ASAP, but it's not a situation of all is lost because they didn't get this done 2 weeks ago. They can still fix this mess, and I think that's important for people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So, all right. Well, I found a map of that Kaiser Family Health, I think, put together showing when each state would run out of money. Yes. We can add that into the notes for this show so that people can see when their state's going to run out of money, mm-hmm. and then make a call before that, really comfortably before that, because
it's in the newsletter as well. At the bottom, there's a link in the map and everything to all of their research.
I think in the newsletter you put in how much each state gets.
Mm-hmm.
You can see like if your state is getting very much help or not. All right. So would you like to hear my exciting context?
Yes, please.
All right.
It's time.
Here's Karen goes off on numbers and history. This time just numbers though. So I looked up the budget, which is the proposed budget is $3.65 trillion, which I don't know, just to say that is $3,650 billion, just so that we have that in billions, 3,650 billions. 1.03 trillion goes to health and Medicaid and that kind of thing. So that's the portion that is. The federal match for CHIP last year was 16 billion. Okay, so out of the 3,650. All right, which is 0.4% of the budget. So for an average family making $50,000, according to the numbers I found, that would be about $24 that they would end up giving to CHIP over a year. So that's how much taxes you're spending to help out kids, and you get it back because then we don't spend money in other places. So for context, here we go. You spend $825 on national defense. Hey, Sarah.
Sarah's here.
Hello. You spend $385 paying interest on our national debt. So that's your minimum credit card payment that we all get to make every year, as compared to just the $24 for which we get healthy kids for instead of nothing except for getting our credit card taken away. Okay, so there we go. That was my numbers. That was the exciting numbers part of the day.
Nice.
I think that's great as far as putting it in context of, that overall this is not, the states aren't asking for the moon here in terms of getting this funding reauthorized.
Exactly, but it's not nothing. I was expecting it to be nothing. So it's small, but not negligible. No, it's not nothing.
Small but mighty.
Yes, but yet mighty. And I was talking to another friend earlier today about this, and she said that growing up, she had a single mom, and her mom couldn't afford very much stuff, and if it wasn't for various bits of support, she never would have gotten to go to college. She never would have been able to, become a professional person and start her own company. So, that's what we're talking about, is it's like helping kids stay on the right track so that they can keep America great.
I really love how much your excitement deflated by the time you realized the sentence that was coming out of your mouth. But yeah, I feel like the medical debt is something that people who have not had to go into medical debt do not grasp how completely debilitating it can be. I mean, I'm uninsured because of what I do. And I had to get a bunch of dental work done, and I had to take out a medical credit card to pay for it. And I'm still paying it off, and it's been a year and a half, so I make $150 a month payments on a credit card for my dental work. Like, that is money that I could have been saving or using for my business, but I can't. And the payments for the insurance would have been $225. So I'm still paying less than I would have for insurance. So, it's just the kind of thing that when people have an idea of what it really is like and how much it really detracts from whatever parents could pay, there are so many things when you're getting ready to put yourself out there in terms of trying to get into colleges or into the workforce, that when you have money, you can pay for your kids to get SAT tutoring, and you can pay all these kinds of things that really give you an enormous advantage. And my parents weren't able to pay for any of that stuff. I watched my friends all go to extra classes and get extra, they were given extra opportunities, really, because they were able to pay for, and that's something everybody wants for their kids. But if you're busy paying off debt from when your kid was sick 3 years ago, that's just completely off the table. And so it makes sense that it's such a domino effect for families and for kids' futures. All right. So I think I'll start this time and call my representative, John Ratcliffe, because I actually get a human being sometimes when I call him. So
I love it.
Yeah, he's going to be the one I call this time.
So are we just asking them to restore funding? Are we asking them to support the bill? What do we feel like our ask is here?
Well, the script from the newsletter, which is from 5 Calls, is to support bipartisan reauthorization and support should not be held hostage to score partisan victories like cuts to the Prevention and Public Health Fund in the proposed Healthy Kids bill. So
basically, that's just to provide some context there. The House committee passed the bill with those funding cuts from other places that they were going to use to pay for CHIP. And then the Democrats said no, none of the Democrats supported it because they want to do different funding. But another big part of that problem is there's not enough. The Healthy Kids Act that the House committee passed provides some extra Medicaid funding for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, but it's not enough. So I think the Democrats want to get that back to the table too, so they can fix that part of it. So what we would be asking our representatives to support is, then they did say yesterday they would go back to the table and discuss it with Democrats again and try to come to a solution, I think, this week. So I think we would be asking them to support this bipartisan process, make sure you get it done, but make sure it's bipartisan, because the one they came up with last week was completely partisan. It did restore funding for CHIP, but it did so in a way that the Democrats couldn't support. So I think we'd be asking them to support a more bipartisan approach, but still get the job done.
Yeah, it seems like
Louise?
there's because I'm not sure that this is the case, but this is what it feels like to me, that they created a second bill with a really similar name to be purposefully confusing to people who might not be completely up to date with the information, because the Kids Act is the one that had bipartisan support, and then the GOP created Healthy Kids Act, which, you know, if I'm casually informed, I would completely get those confused in a second, and it would be really frustrating to me. Like, I would probably call and support maybe the wrong bill if I were some, you know, so.
Did you say the template that you had was telling people to urge them to support bipartisan reauthorization? Is that the word they're using?
I'll read it to you verbatim. I'm calling to urge Representative Blank to support bipartisan reauthorization of the Children's Health Insurance Program. Millions of children rely on this funding for insurance, and its reauthorization should not be held hostage to score partisan victories like cuts to the Prevention and Public Health Fund in the proposed Healthy Kids bill, which is the GOP one. And that's the full script from 5 calls. Does that seem right?
Yeah, that definitely. I think they're basically saying don't go with what the House committee came up with last week, because it cuts the ACA prevention fund. It does some other things too that actually I don't think people would really disapprove of, like making people who make more than $500,000 a year have to pay more for their Medicare. You know, I don't think anybody's going to feel too sad about that one. I mean, there are definitely concerns that Medicare we shouldn't add more means testing to Medicare, because when you means test a program, then not everybody's equally invested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, even that, it has its own controversy, but for the most part, I think the concern is cutting that public health and prevention fund, and then the funding for Medicaid in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So yeah, I think, if people just need to know that they just need to urge their representatives to support bipartisan CHIP reauthorization. That's the key point there. If they forget, like, healthy kids, it needs to be bipartisan CHIP reauthorization.
Yeah, this is a good one to leave all of the games behind and just hero out away and collaborate. Okay, so Louise, one more question. How many kids did you say rely on it in Colorado? Because I'll be calling my Colorado person.
In Colorado, I think it's about 75,000 kids and about 800 pregnant moms.
Okay.
Wow.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Natasha, take it away.
Let's do this. All right.
Come on, person. Come on, person.
All right.
Good afternoon, Congressman Ratcliffe's office.
Hi, my name is Natasha Kingston. I was calling to express my opinion on a bill.
Yes, ma'am.
I was calling to urge Representative Ratcliffe to please support bipartisan reauthorization of the Children's Health Insurance Program. We have millions of children that are relying on this for insurance, and its reauthorization should not be held hostage to score partisan victories like cuts to prevention and public health funds in the proposed Healthy Kids bill. I just think that this is something that we should put the games aside, and it's already been taken into account in a lot of state budgets because it has not failed to be renewed in the past. So I would really appreciate it if he would support bipartisan funding of this.
Sure, okay. And is your address 915 Ray Drive in Denison?
It is.
Okay, great. I will send this on to the DC office and ask that you receive a response.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
How did I know that?
They remembered me.
They seriously have your number.
Wow. If she wasn't so nice with the Texas accent, that would have sounded like a threat.
I'll make sure you get a response.
By the way, I know where you live.
I have never, in all the times I've called, I have never had them ask for my address, and especially not just have it already in their system. They always ask for a zip code, but I've never had them ask for an address.
I'm on his mailing list also, and all over his Facebook feed. So I'm, probably on some kind of watch list.
That was a nice all. That was fine.
That felt much better than usual. I will say I feel like I was actually heard this week, so that's lovely.
That is excellent. All right, so in Colorado, both of my senators are sponsors of the KIDS Act in the Senate. So they already apparently are quite aware that this matters. So I am actually going to call my representative for a little bit of a change, who is Diana DeGette.
Nice.
And she's great. I'm just going to throw that out. I like her. All right. I'm going to try the Denver office first. See what we get. Well, that's not very loud, is it?
I can hear it fine, though.
Congresswoman DeGette's office, how may I help you?
Hi, good afternoon. I was calling about a bill, if that's okay.
Sure, how can I help you?
Great. My name is Karen Suhaka, and I'm a voter from Denver. My zip code is 80203. Do you need anything else from me?
No, just what
Okay.
feedback would you like to leave?
I would like to urge Representative DeGette to support bipartisan reauthorization of the Children's Health Insurance Program. 97% of kids in Colorado currently have health insurance, which is almost good enough, but 75,000 of them rely on CHIP. So Colorado funding for CHIP is projected to run out in the first quarter of next year, so we need to get this addressed and fixed. So hopefully you can find a bipartisan way to reauthorize the funding so that we can get this done before the state funding runs out. So I don't know the answer, but hopefully you guys can work together and figure out like where the funding is going to come from.
All right, and she is on it. That's something she's very passionate about, and she is working to see what she can do.
Music to my ears. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yay!
Yay. Sounded sincere.
So my strategy, I'm always calling Republicans, and so, you know, Michael Bennett never gets a call from me, but Cory Gardner gets a lot of calls from me. So my representative is Jared Polis, and I that you just gave me an idea there. Like, I should probably call him more often and or at least say thank you.
Sometimes we call and say thank you. Often we call and yell at Cory Gardner. Last week we called about gun control, and Bennett has sort of a spotty record, so I felt like that was a good one. And the guy on the phone admitted that they weren't quite sure what they were going to do, so that was good, I think. But I see your point. Obviously, we do call our Republicans more, but it is nice to be able to say thank you once in a while too if your representative is good.
It's
Right,
nice to be able
absolutely.
to say thank you when your representative sucks, too.
Oh yeah, you're Cornyn. Yeah, every now and then Cornyn does the right thing.
Once in a blue moon.
Right.
Never Ted Cruz though.
Never. Yeah. I cannot know what a bill is about at all. And I hear his stance and I'm like, well, clearly I don't agree with him. I don't know what that is about, but
That's no way to be. True as it might be. All right, Cheryl, what do you got for us?
I'm going to call my Senator Roy Blunt.
Perfect.
Yes, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I think this is pretty straightforward. Thanks to your message, I just did a double check and I didn't see him listed as a co-sponsor. I hadn't thought to do that before, so thank you.
look at the show doing stuff.
I know.
Senator Blunt's office, how may I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to express my opinion on a bill. Can I share that with you?
Of course.
Wonderful. My name.
Please have your zip code.
Oh, sure. My zip code is 63126.
Thank you.
And my name is Cheryl Pryor. I am calling about the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP. And I'm calling to urge Senator Blunt to support the KIDS Act. It's Senate Bill 1827 to reauthorize CHIP funding. There are millions of children that are relying on this funding for their insurance. This really needs bipartisan support. So kids of Republicans and kids of Democrats all deserve to be healthy, and that's better for us in the long run. That's it.
Okay, I am happy to pass your message to the senator. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was good.
That's good.
I get real people almost every time.
You
It's
do.
awesome. Mhm.
I'm jelly.
Terrence, I need registered to vote at my new address, so we have the same representative now.
Oh, that's so boring.
You
Call and yell at Gardner. It's something we're good at.
Okay.
Except he's already sponsoring it, so I don't know what else we can ask him to do.
You could call and say thank you to that person.
Hey, I think you can actually still call and ask him, hey, can you get a little more bipartisan? Because actually the Senate hasn't said how they will finance it, I think. Unless I've missed, yeah, because they're gone this week. So
Perfect.
the Senate, their bill, the big like question mark on their bill is how are we going to fund this? So his sponsoring of this bill to make it a bipartisan funding approach.
Okay.
So thank you for sponsoring it. Can you maintain focus on finding a bipartisan way through for funding?
All right. I'll do that.
Love it. So Sarah, you're going to be pro kids today. You're on board with our call. Excellent. Corey Gardner's voicemail.
This is the Colorado office.
Doesn't matter.
Thank you for calling the office.
All right, I'll try DC.
Louise says his Yuma office sometimes answers.
I do. I have the best luck with his Yuma office.
I don't have that number handy though.
Oh, I can get it here. Let's see.
Senator Gardner's office. This is Chris. How can I help you?
Hi, I was wanting to share my opinion on a bill.
Sure.
My name is Sarah Johnson, and my zip code is 80211.
Okay.
And I just wanted to first thank Senator Gardner for sponsoring the new children's health care bill. I am very proud that he did that. And I just wanted to ask him to continue to push for fair bipartisan funding for the bill. I know that the Senate hasn't said how they are going to fund it yet, and I would really hope that we can keep up with the bipartisan because all kids deserve to be covered.
Okay. And you're talking about the CHIP program, right? Just I want to
Yeah, the CHIP program.
Okay. All right. I'll make sure to pass it on for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Have a nice day. All right. Bye.
DC office covered. Can you believe that? I can't.
All right, I'll call Jared Polis's office.
Do it.
I love your idea that we should
Paul
call.
Meister. I love him.
Sarah moved out of Polis's district, sadly.
Oh.
That's the no Polis face from Sarah.
Oh.
He was awesome.
I'm also becoming a lobster in my car right now.
Hi, my name is Louise Norris. I live in Wellington, Colorado. My zip code is 80549. And I just wanted to share my opinion on legislation.
Yeah, I'd be happy to pass that along for you.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just, as far as the CHIP reauthorization, I just wanted to make sure that I saw that we are back on track for looking at a bipartisan approach to funding that bill. And so I just wanted to really encourage Representative Polis to work on that bipartisan approach and just make sure that one way or another we get it done, that CHIP reauthorization happens. There's just too many kids in Colorado who rely on that program and families that rely on that program. We need to make sure we fund it so we don't run out of money.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to make sure, and I know it's something that's a priority of ours as well.
Okay, that's great.
Is there anything else you'd like me to pass along today?
No, just thank Representative Polis for his service to us. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for taking the time to give us a call.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
How did it feel to be positive?
It's It's good. I've made so many calls. I've made so many calls to Corey Gardner's office this year. Since about January, I feel like I've been calling, honestly, like 2 or 3 times a week. So that was good. That's the first time I've called Representative Polis all year. So I'm very glad you gave me the reminder there that we need to do that too.
Yay.
All right. So from the whole team, I'd like to say future generations, you're welcome.
And go eat an apple.
That is going to be our new tagline for the broadcast. Is just future generations, you're welcome.
With a winky.
We're doing our best.
All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. Thank you, Elise, for being here.
Help.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.